Ο νεαρός νυμφεύτηκε την γλυκύτατη παραδουλεύτρα. Έστειλε την αγαπημένη του αγελάδα στον ταύρο του χωριού.
Μάλιστα, Μιλόρ.
Εκείνο το βράδυ που λες, θα γινότανε μία...
Yes, it is absurd. A joke, really. A villager claims that a bull failed to impregnate a cow but impregnated a man's wife. The servant protests that such a thing is impossible, and we, as modern spectators, are inclined to agree. But I would suggest that if we approach this scene through the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche, we have misunderstood the entire conversation. The scene is not about bulls, nor is it about cows. It is not even about biological possibility. The true subject is the origin of values. Notice what happens when the servant declares the event impossible. He does not provide evidence. He does not investigate. He does not reason his way to the conclusion. He simply repeats what we already know. A bull cannot impregnate a woman. Impossible, absurd. And yet Nietzsche would immediately ask a dangerous question. How do you know? Not whether the statement is scientifically correct. That is irrelevant. The deeper question is, by what authority do you speak? Did you discover this truth yourself, or did you inherit it? The servant embodies what Nietzsche called herd morality. He speaks with the confidence and represents society itself. Every judgment he makes has already been approved by the collective. Every value he holds has already been sanctified by custom, tradition, and common sense. He mistakes consensus for truth. The Lord, on the other hand, performs a profoundly Nietzschean act. He challenges the system itself. He does not merely question the conclusion. He questions the framework that produced the conclusion. The servant says, "It is impossible." The Lord responds, "Impossible according to whom?" This is the beginning of philosophical freedom. Most of us inherit a collection of beliefs, values, assumptions, and moral instincts, and then spend our lives defending them as though they were self-evident truths. Nietzsche's genius was to recognize that what we call truth is often merely a habit that has become invisible. The herd does not know that it is a herd. It believes its values are reality itself. Notice how the discussion shifts. We should ask which of the 5 men can do it, not whether the thing itself is possible. The Lord replies, "You have discovered the only truth." What is this truth? Sometimes possibility is created. The herd asks, "Can this be done?" It seeks permission and certainty. This distinction lies at the heart of Nietzsche's concept of self-mastery. Self-mastery is often misunderstood. Many imagine it means controlling one's impulses or disciplining one's behavior. For Nietzsche, it is something far more radical. Self-mastery means becoming the legislator of one's own values. It means examining every inherited belief and asking, "Why do I believe this? Who benefits from this belief? What fear produced this value? What weakness hides behind this certainty?" The individual who cannot ask these questions remains a servant, regardless of his social status. The individual who can ask them begins the path toward becoming what Nietzsche called the Übermensch. The Lord in this instance is the manifestation of the Übermensch. He possesses the courage to stand alone against consensus. He possesses the courage to suspect that what everyone calls reality may merely be convention. And this is why the scene must be absurd. But the example is intentionally outrageous. It forces the mind into crisis. The audience immediately recoils. That is impossible. The scene is designed to expose how quickly we appeal to accepted categories. The Lord's purpose is not to convince us that bulls impregnate women. His purpose is to reveal how eagerly we surrender our judgment to collective assumptions. The bull becomes a symbol of every idea dismissed because it violates accepted categories. Ultimately, the scene presents us with a choice. We may remain with the servant, sheltered by inherited truths, protected by the comfort of consensus. Or we may follow the Lord into a far more dangerous territory, where every value is subjected to criticism, where every certainty must justify itself, and where the individual becomes responsible for creating meaning rather than receiving it. This is the burden of freedom, and according to Nietzsche, it is also the beginning of greatness.
Που ποδοπατήθηκαν από 80 πελώρια παχύδραμα. Κάπου τόσα μετρά ο δοκιδίτης, Μιλόρντ. Οι υπόλοιποι του μεζικάρι.
Let's take a closer look at the servant, who appears to be the only sane voice in this dialectic. He speaks of nature, he speaks of history, he speaks of evidence, of limits, of failed expeditions and sleeping forests. He insists that nothing meaningful can be achieved in defiance of these conditions. And yet, what appears to be rationality is in fact something more subtle. The internalization of ideology, so complete that it no longer appears as ideology at all. The historical organization of the world, the accumulated result of material relations, power structures, and past defeats, has been so thoroughly sedimented that it now appears as a neutral description of reality. Nature sleeps. History shows failure. The world does not permit such action. But what is nature here, if not ideology made reality? The point at which historically produced conditions become experienced as eternal necessity. The servant does not realize he is speaking from within a structure. He believes he is speaking from outside it. He treats the current distribution of possibility as if it were ontological truth. What has historically been the case becomes, in his speech, what must always be the case. Here is the Marxist insight we need to consider. The material base of society produces not only economic relations, but the very horizon of what can be imagined. It shapes not only labor and production, but desire, expectation, and even the sense what is possible. Thus, when the servant says, there is no evidence, what he really means is, there is no evidence within the limits of the current system of intelligibility. When he says, others have failed, he is not merely describing history. He is converting historical contingency into permanent law. He is, in Marxist terms, reproducing the ideology of the present mode of society as if it were nature itself. Every argument he makes folds back into the same structure. Do not act beyond what has already been validated by prior outcomes. But prior outcomes are themselves the product of a particular historical arrangement of forces. They are not neutral evidence. They are the sediment of a world that has already selected its winners, its failures, and its definitions of possibility. Here the Lord's interruption is not merely madness, it is revolution. He refuses the premise that the present configuration of reality is self-justifying. But perhaps the deepest philosophical layer emerges when we consider existentialism. For thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, the absence of guarantees is not a reason for withdrawal, but the very condition of freedom. Meaning is not discovered within nature or history. It is produced through commitment under conditions of uncertainty. The servant, however, does the opposite. He waits for authorization from reality. He demands that history justify action before action is even attempted. He seeks permission from a world that only ever reveals itself after it has been challenged. The Lord, by contrast, embodies a different logic entirely, not the logic of certainty, but of intervention. He does not ask whether the world permits action. He acts, and thereby forces the question of permission to become irrelevant. Whether he succeeds or fails is not yet the point. The point is that the servant has already accepted defeat at the level of interpretation. He believes he is describing limits while in truth, he is reproducing them. And this is where Marx, Nietzsche, and existentialism converge in an unexpected way. What appears as reality is often a stabilized interpretation of past power relations. What appears as truth is often inherited fear turned into logic. And what appears as impossibility is often only the status quo defending itself from change. Thus the servant is not wrong because he is irrational. He is wrong because his rationality is bounded by the world that produced it. The force sleeps. History warns. Nature resists. But every transformation in history has begun precisely at the point where someone refused to treat these sentences as eternal law rather than historical condition. To close, let me quote Marx when he said, "The philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways." The point, however, is to change it.